people harmonizing is truly one of my favorite
It's
gifts.
so lovely.
Of like, it's so beautiful.
Lovely.
And I'm like, how do people do it?
Our friend, she started singing Lord, I Lift Your Name on High. You didn't want that.
I gave it on my all.
You
Does that have
rejected it.
harmonies in it?
No.
Anything can have, any song can be harmonized.
Oh,
too. Literally
okay.
Any song. Yeah, any song.
Can you guys harmonize?
Nicole, shouldn't we be talking about something?
Fine. That is not what we're here to do. Fine. Closer to fine. That's my reference to the Indigo Girls song. Everybody go listen to it.
Okay.
And you tell me.
I feel like I have an Office reference. I can feel like I can hear Andy from The Office singing
Closer to fine.
Closer I am to fine.
Yeah. See,
but that's
you
all I
knew
know.
it.
I know
That's
from
it.
Andy singing it for 2 seconds.
Or least complicated. Two great Indigo Girls songs. Okay.
Oh, Indigo Girls. I thought you were
Indigo
talking about
Girls.
Avril Lavigne.
Song.
Why'd you have to go and make things
So, but it's not less complicated. Indigo Girls is the least complicated.
Oh, you're saying less complicated.
Speaking of complicated, let's talk about relationships. How about that?
Okay.
Speaking
Are
of
we started?
complicated, yes, we're going to start now.
We're the lost words, but I don't feel so lost with you. Fly through the mountain ranges, but I'll never see the danger. That fireballs is swinging, but our hearts are full. I'm not worried, but I'm
Welcome to Let's Be Real. I just learned last week that it's season 5. I didn't even know.
Wow.
So here we are. It's season 5. Okay, you guys.
We've all missed it.
This was an SOS.
It plays automatically in the car.
It does. Oh, that's really cool. Do you know Natalie's music now is at the beginning of it?
Oh, I love that.
Which is super fun. I was
really
just trying to
fun.
get a little. You guys are
A little
two
zhuzh.
truly. I'm going to introduce you for real in a second, but y'all are two of my favorite voices that I have the pleasure of calling friends and getting to hear your voices or be led in worship by you. So,
That's so
I just want to
sweet.
say that.
I love
Very
that.
And I want to think about, there's only like one other person I would add to the couch, and that would be it.
Who are they?
Drew Daniels.
Oh,
Drew
yeah.
and Paige.
Exactly.
Two
Yeah.
people on the couch.
Accepted.
Drew and Paige. That's
Yeah,
it. Those are my
totally.
absolute faves. So you guys are awesome. Okay, well, thanks for being here. Hey, everybody. This is like an SOS podcast because we had a little blip in some work we were doing, and I was like, let's talk about this topic anyway. So we're going to talk about godly dating, which I don't know why I'm laughing, but this is because I invited Natalie and Erin. That's why I'm laughing.
You're laughing
So
because-
Tavares and Safa Gray wrote this book. I had an awesome interview with Tavares, and then we lost it, and we're kind of under the gun. So I thought I actually want to talk about this topic with my friends anyway. So this is a shout out for Tavares and Safa. I think this is a great book. Actually, my sister-in-law reached out, and she's like, "Is this a good book for young people like my kids?" And I was like, yeah, like teenage and on, not super young, but I did appreciate just a fresh voice that's engaging honestly and deeply with relationships and what does it mean to be godly in your relationships and where does dating fit into all of that. But I thought, since it's Let's Be Real, I would just have a really real conversation with two of my favorite single friends who are here with us. I don't define you as single.
don't
I
have
want
a
to make
man.
that clear.
We don't have no man.
We are alone.
My single
Yes.
friends. Here we
I don't
are.
even like to say that because it like makes it sound more important than anything else about you. Which that's a good question to start with. Okay, this is what I want to know. Do you feel like you've received messages that at your age, y'all are not 23, you're not old, but you're not 18. We all.
It's true. Thank God.
Do you feel like you've received messages that it's a negative thing to be single at like whatever stage of life you feel like you're in?
Yes.
Okay, so
Shall I
yeah, tell me
elaborate?
more. Yeah, I'd love to hear more.
I think definitely the messaging that I feel like I have internalized is that a woman's value and self-worth is based on whether a man chooses her. And I think I've lived a lot of my life, just wanting to be one of the special ones that have gotten chosen. Which is so dumb, honestly, but that's just how.
It's valid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that ideology is dumb. Not that
Yes,
I was being
correct.
dumb. I think that was just, I was swimming in the sea of that culture. But,
And what do you think that when you say that culture, I'm sure there's several streams that
there's
go
layers
into
to
that
it. Yeah.
sea.
I think it's culture of the earth and then American culture.
Yeah.
And then Christian culture. And then, I think my family and stuff too, not quite as acutely, I think for me. I feel like my my family is more so like, you need to go to school and be educated because you can't rely on anybody else but yourself. So,
Okay,
that's
that was,
slightly
like,
different.
Slightly different. Yeah. Okay, now how about you?
You know, I think it's interesting because I feel like now, and maybe this is just the messaging that I have chosen to surround or just happened. I feel like now a lot more people are choosing to, like, I feel like their standards are a lot higher. And so it's less, like, I don't feel like it's a negative that I'm single. But I am also in a place where, like, some of my closest friends are single and, like, I'm the youngest child. And so, like, my brother and sister have kids. So my parents have that, like, grandparent thing going on already. And so it doesn't really matter what I do. And so maybe I have the benefit of those kind of things. I don't feel like in my sphere, have messaging that's like, it's a negative to be single. Now, check back in with me in, like, a year to 2 years when, like, some of my closest friends have, like, gotten married or, like, started having babies. Like, then I think it'll be like, okay, you know, this is not fun anymore. But I think there's just a bigger emphasis on, like, career now and more of, like, self-fulfillment and stuff that I'm seeing. That's way less of you need to, like, hunker down and find someone to, you know, be worthy of anything.
Yeah, I
Which
mean,
I think is nice, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I resonate with that. I think my experience was, like, somewhere in between where there was, like, conflicting, like, actually messages in opposition to one another. So in school and going to college and that, it was like, you need to be about your career and about who you're meant to be. And there was just no even thought of the sacrifice that would be part of being married.
Right.
But then in the church, I feel like the message was, like, deep and wide that your most important, most valued role as a woman was as a wife and as a mother. So I'm curious, what do you guys feel like you received when you think about messages that you've received from the church around, let's say, marriage, singleness, sex? What do you think were some of the things that you've internalized and for good or for bad, like, as you're now actually living it out where you are right now?
Ladies first.
I know I just dropped that. It was a big question.
So I think I think at my church specifically, we have really tried to move away from the marriage as the end all be all. However, which is a good thing. However, I think it's brought up frustrations in me where it's like, well, it's not the end all be all and everything. And, you know, but I'm like, yeah, but I still want it. Like, it's not, I don't think it's dismissed, but it just feels like people who got married really young will then, like, turn to you and be like, well, marriage isn't everything. And, like, you know, you still have community and you still have all these things. And I'm like, that's great. And that's great that you're not, like, pushing me towards something. At the same time, you have to acknowledge, like, there are some things that are better with a partner. Like, we're wired for companionship and everything like that. So I feel like in my church life now, specifically, that's more of, like, the messaging that I get. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what you.
Yeah, I think that church and its messaging, you know, I've been a part of. I'm like, what should I say here?
Really watching your words.
Yeah, you know, it's all fine. Like, yeah, I think there's a lot of, you know, the people in leadership are largely married, and the people who are providing this messaging that are saying being single is not, you know, the worst thing that could happen. But, like, you got a bunch of, like, I heard this lady say once, you got legs and thighs to go home to in the bed. Like, you don't even know. Like, I would rather us just, you know, let's just have it all be normal. So I definitely agree with you, Natalie. Like, the desire is still there. Okay, you're saying it doesn't mean everything, but I don't know. I think being single and heavily involved in church, especially being on church leadership while being single, when you start dating, honestly, your priorities do shift. I definitely think people think it's, like, an antiquated view. Like, when the scripture is referenced where it says that, like, single women stay single because in your mind is just on the Lord and the things of the Lord. That was absolutely my experience. When I was single and not dating anybody, I mean, on fire for Jesus. Not that I'm not on fire for the Lord now, but it just was a different level of like, so much of my like time and intention is being set on this work that I'm doing at the church or for my ministry, whatever. But once I was in a serious relationship, that just is different. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that we have to like be a little bit more measured when we're talking about what's actually going to come with dating, especially at my big age. I'm in my mid-30s. So, and I don't know how old you are, dear, but I don't think that you are.
Baby face.
Right. I
believe she's
we've
under 30.
You're not 18.
I'm like 28, yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're a fully formed adult. So it's going to look different for us. And I think that, but I don't know. I'm rambling at this point.
No, I like what you said. I mean, I really like what you said about people think it's an antiquated view. And actually, I feel like people don't actually even really talk about the fact that singleness is addressed in scripture. Yeah. And it's like, if you're single, you have a one-track mind. Basically, if I was going to paraphrase, I'd be like, yeah, you can have a one-track mind for this work. And I do think it's good to say we're finite beings with a certain amount of energy.
Right.
I remember, so my really closest friend growing up didn't get married until her sort of mid-30s. A couple of my closest friends got married in their mid to late 30s, both of them like really committed to ministry. And I remember once having this conversation with my friend and saying like, man, I feel like in our relationship, I'm like very high on your list as far as a person that you care for, that you care about, that you remember, that you reach out to. And I said, just with my family, like, because I have 3 children. At that point, I had 3 children and a husband. I'm like, you couldn't be higher than number 5 on my list. Yeah. You just can't. Uh-huh. And like, that means that we are in a different place. And like, how do we have a relationship and love one another well, while I like also acknowledge that I have incredible limitations. So that's my analogy to talk about, like, when you are single and you can pursue life in sort of a one-track way, there can be a benefit to that. But also, like, how do we say, yeah, but like, you have someone to come home to and you have a partner in life, and that feels different. And what do we do about like how that gets talked about? Because I do think, do you guys think that there are some negative messages in general that are out there about Christianity and the church when it comes to marriage, singleness, sex?
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be like deep dive. Not really. But so I used to watch the Bachelor franchise. I don't anymore because...
Why do you call it the franchise? Is that what they call it?
Because there's Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise.
Oh, so you
it's
watched
like a whole
all of them.
Yeah.
You watched
now
the
I only
full
really watch
suite.
Bachelor in Paradise because it's the only entertaining one. However, there was a girl on The Bachelor, and I mean, when you come off that show and you have a lot of fame, she is a Christian, and she has like all of these followings, all this huge platform. Like I don't know which church it is, but she'll like go and speak at churches now. And she is like a Christian influencer online now. Well, she just got engaged after 8 months of dating this guy, who happens to be like the son of a billionaire. And I'm like, okay, sorry, that's judgmental.
It's also going to be your story.
It's also going to be my story. So can't wait for that. However,
there's just so many layers.
There's so many
everything
layers.
that you just said. There's so many layers.
Sit here for hours and just unpack. Yes. Oh, really? Like,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm not trying to judge
but
you,
they
lady.
did like
Sorry.
an Instagram live, and I saw some clips from it, and it really bothered me because they were like, we've had some people say like, oh, that's so fast. Why did you get engaged after 8 months? And they were like 2 reasons. Like, they're like, when you know, you just know, whatever. And then the second
8
one,
months? Sorry, which it's not
okay.
no judgment. I have lots
Is
of
that
questions.
short or long? Is short or long 8 months?
I mean, in the world, probably like short.
Outside of Christians,
Outside of Christians, it's short.
Extremely short.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outside of Christians who are saving it for marriage.
Which brings me to my second point.
brings me to my
and
second point.
And this really bothered me because she was like, also we're staying pure or until marriage. We're pursuing purity until marriage. And they started joking and they were like, so let's wrap it up, like, like laughing. And I was really bothered by that because I was like, you are this like Christian influencer now with all of these young girls following your every move and like hanging on your every word. And the message that you are giving out right now is that sex is a valid reason to like move the date up to marry somebody. Like that is a huge commitment. And the message that you are sending right now is just like, I mean, it's like peak purity culture. Like it was so maddening to me that I was like, ooh, I can't do it.
There's a lot of criticism of purity culture and like reframing of like just what the phrase of like staying pure and being pure, like that kind of ideology. It really messes people up because I have friends, honestly, this girl I know, hopefully she never listens to this podcast, but she just was like, I had to go to counseling to be able to enjoy sex because I was just always taught that sex is wrong. That, all right, so now I'm 23 or 24. I just got married. I'm supposed to jump into it like with both feet. Like, and I think purity culture should should really be examined and critiqued because I think it's just, I don't know how much help it's doing or has done in the past 30 years that it's been really alive.
So
and I think online there's a lot of like healing from purity culture. People are like very sex positive and which I don't think is necessarily a negative thing because I think sex is a positive, beautiful thing. But I just think Christian people are just so weird about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think it's a reaction to, let's talk about the other side of the coin, right? Which is like sex completely detached from relationship, commitment, like, real intimacy. And do you think that it's a reaction to that? Like, basically, what I'm trying to say is, what do you think I should tell my children?
You're like, what do I do?
Please
tell me what to do.
Well, like, you just think about, like, you guys are, we represent a different generation, the three of us, all in a row. And so, like, if you think about, my daughter's 18. So I feel all those things because on one side I'm like, man, this purity culture thing, this thing that it provides this like strange shame that somehow makes you at fault for the clothes that you wear or a situation that you might find yourself in. And we all know that like sexual assault is rampant and abuse. So then we've got this massive group of people that, Jesus would say he would love the most because they're marginalized, who've had a really, really traumatic experience around sex and sexuality. And they're getting the message that they're now not pure because of it. So we've got that going on. Then we have like this other thing going on, which is like promiscuous sex without boundaries is very destructive. I mean, this is, hearkening back to my therapy days, outside of faith, not really talking about any sort of moral compass or spiritual grounding, it was a very destructive force that women were experiencing, right? So we've got that. And then we're trying to land somewhere in the middle that's God honoring. What do you guys like? What do you think is a good message? Like, how do you describe, how you engage in the world that is so sex saturated, but also not engage with like a legalistic, shame laden like message either? Don't jump in all at once. I was
She's like, I will.
I'll let Natalie go.
So here's the thing. Here's what I try and hold true for myself. And if I'm like, if a younger woman is coming to me and asking me stuff about this is what I will tell them. And I have told them. And it's not going to be the typical, like, just don't do it response. I always say you have to know why you are doing something or why you're not doing something. And you have to be brutally honest with yourself. And if you cannot answer that, then you cannot move forward with anything. So, like, if you're like, I'm saving sex until marriage, I'm like, that's great. Why are you doing that? Why are you not having sex? Why, and I'm not trying to like poke holes in everything, but I want to know because then it's like, well, because if I sleep with someone, then my marriage is going to be cursed. Then I'm like, woohoo, okay. Which is actually something that I feel kind of grew up thinking is like, I am dating someone and we get engaged and like something happens or whatever, then like our marriage is going to be like really off track and everything. That's something I've had to wrestle with even as a later adult. And so that's what I always say is like, you have to know, because if you understand your reasoning and your values, then like you have ownership over your decisions. And I think that is like, I can't tell you what to do or what not to do. Right. Like I'm a person, and girls that I've mentored are people who are, I can say the fire is hot, don't touch it. And they're gonna be like, but is it really? And they're gonna touch it and they're gonna learn that it's hot, but they had to figure that out for themselves. Right. I can't be the one to tell them not to, or tell them to. I would never. Like, I would just try and guide them so they know why they're doing something or why they're not doing something, if that
So
makes
good.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, Natalie, you said something about, I don't know if you used the word agency, but that's what I got from that. And I think that's so important. Like, I think when it comes to sex with anybody, there's agency and accountability. I know, like, when you're a teenager, your hormones just start pumping. But I feel like a lot of time I've heard experiences, especially from young women, their first sexual experiences were not necessarily, it wasn't the thing that they felt like they were all the way ready to do.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like my message is, your body is your own, and that's a very intimate thing to do. And you need to make sure you are making that choice.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you're trying to do it to make some dusty somebody, make them happy or make them like you more because they're dusty.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't, it's never worth it when you do that.
And it's never worked.
It's I'm speaking from
Literally
experience.
doesn't
It's
work.
literally never worth it when you do
tried.
that. Right. But there's also, on the flip side, there's accountability with people, usually young men, who, like, you need to take accountability for what you're expecting or asking of others, and like the influence you may have over another person. Like, is this undue influence? Like, so I think it's agency and accountability from both people. And that's just how they make the decision, which is not necessarily the Christian answer. I know people are going to do, my experience has been in my life, in my walk as a human, as a pastor, people are going to do what they want to do. That's just that's just what happens. But and God loves you and receives you and wants to, if there's brokenness there, wants to restore that. And if there's not, fantastic. I think I want to be brutally honest and very real with those types of conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I actually think what you're saying is godly. I mean, it might not be the way it might not be the exact words that you would see in scripture, but the idea of agency and accountability, because
not
those
what
are
the
like our
Bible
modern
says,
words.
but-
I mean, guys, this is Erin chapter 2, verse 3. Okay.
But that's what
He's
I'm saying, though,
dusty.
Nicole. I'm like, the writers, I know that the Bible is inspired, and I really do believe that. And it's useful for us today, but also the writers of scripture could not have conceived of a woman like you or a woman like me I'll speak for myself, a woman in her mid-30s that, has all of her own stuff, like makes all her own money, is unmarried. Like, that just was not the context in which the scripture was written in. So I think that we have to understand that God is still working in and through the culture that we're in today.
Right.
So let's just be realistic. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I just think that, no, the words that I said were not necessarily scriptural. But I'm hoping that there are still biblical and like godly guidelines.
Yeah, let's call it. I actually would call it wisdom. Is more like, knowledge is one thing, but knowledge plus experience is wisdom. And I think wisdom would say that understanding agency and accountability in this day, and I think a lot of us, like, one thing that a counselor friend of mine says about Christian girls, which is, I would be interested in what you guys think. She said, when I counsel Christian women who are going through a hard time and they have been sexually active, they marry their boyfriend in their heart. Like, they in their heart are like, this is where this is going. This is going to be my one and only. This is going to be, and I don't think that's true for every single woman who grew up in the church, but it's a really powerful thought. Is like, agency would be having the honesty to be able to say to yourself, did I do that? Or am I doing that? Am I actually like compromising here to be like, oh, this is going to be who I'm going to be with, or not compromising and really being like, that's the decision I made. And now it's destructive or not helpful. And it's agency. That's agency. And accountability is your other point, which is like,
really
everyone's
good,
made in the, like, male and female, everyone's made in the image of God. Am I treating this person that I'm dating, and the other wisdom would say, as I feel like I've said this 5 times this week, if you're dating someone, you are only going to break up or get married. Those are the only options.
Right.
You're probably going to break up. So
Yeah.
how are you honoring this person that you are going to break up with? Like, it's, you know what I mean? You're only going to marry one of them, and you're, in my kids' case, they're 17 or 18 or 19. Yeah. And it's like, how do you have accountability around the way you're treating someone else's spouse? Like, it's going to be somebody else's. Yeah. And that's just wisdom. That's just knowledge plus experience, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you got me thinking about something that's just like, we treat dating, I think especially Christians treat dating so seriously.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is, if you're gonna be physical with the person. Because when you are romantic with somebody, like those feelings pop up, whatever's natural. So you just are like, oh my gosh, this could be my husband. Whereas I think that people who aren't within, and I'm processing
Yeah.
as I'm talking, but like they're a little bit more casual about
Yeah.
like, this is just a guy I'm seeing right now. Like if I had the mindset when had my first boyfriend at 16 years old, that this is just a guy that I'm seeing and it will not last. This is not forever. This is not the one God
Right. This is
held for me. You know what I mean? Like I would have made different choices. Like I'm just having fun with this person. We're hanging out.
Right. You'd have
And
made
I
different
wish it was
choices
like
the way
that.
you engaged with the guy. Yeah, I know. I mean,
Yeah, totally.
I'll talk to like it's interesting to talk to my kids because I'm like, are you learning how to be a good friend to an opposite sex person? Because that is a great thing to learn.
Yeah,
Like that's a great thing to
totally.
learn in high school. In fact, Tavares, sorry, but this is where I disagreed with you because you talked about if you're not dating to marry, then don't date at all. And I think there can be wisdom. And I think it actually depends on the person. Like that's an individual, like knowing of yourself. Like, am I going to be able to keep it at that level and like have great boundaries kind of physically, emotionally that let me be like an okay person if this ends. So I think it can go both ways. I'm not at all saying it needs to be one or the other, but my kids have chosen to date. So therefore I've chosen to be like, are you learning how to be a good friend?
Right.
Because that's a really good thing.
And you
to
don't have to
learn.
marry that person in your heart. You're 16
Right.
years old. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's just
Right. Well, and I also I wish that I had learned how to casual date sooner. But my first serious boyfriend was when I was 23, 24.
Same.
And by then, by then I hadn't wanted to actually date someone and had those feelings for someone ever. And so I was like, oh my gosh, so this must mean that he's the one.
Yeah.
And then I got really attached. And then 5 months later, we broke up because I was like, oh, you're not the one. So, but and then after that, I was just didn't really date. And I didn't really learn how to casual date until, I don't know, a year and a half ago, which is insane. I'm 28 years old. But I would go in being like, could he be the one?
Yeah.
So dating to marry, I think it robs you of getting to know people right in front of you as just a person and as a friend. What does my friend need from me right now? Learning that and you learn so much about yourself too, about oh, I thought that I wanted this, but I experienced that in this guy that I saw a couple times and I actually is not great for me. Or, you learn boundaries as you go, what boundaries work for you. You learn from experience. So I think,
Do Christian women not know how to date?
No, I don't think we do.
Because
We
honestly,
don't.
No,
We don't.
I feel
I
like
say
because
no.
we meet this person and we're like, oh my gosh, God sent this person my way.
Right.
And we look past whatever red flag is there because
Right.
God allowed
Just
this to
literally
come into my
waving,
life.
waving in front of your
Exactly.
face.
When you
Yes.
could just be like, actually, this doesn't fit. On to the next one. But I feel like we're just so deep about everything.
Yeah.
Like, Lord, okay, you've allowed this person. What lesson am I supposed? It could just be.
I think the
he's
Lord's
not
like, you see that
great.
red flag? That's the lesson I have
Yeah,
for you.
literally.
Yeah.
You are a treasure and a wonderful.
And we're falling in love
And
with
you-
potential.
Yeah.
Or not even potential. There's nothing there.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a big one, is the difference between potential and nothing there. And
Yeah.
honestly, I think both of those are red flags.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
I think you've got
Yeah.
to move forward
Yeah.
with someone as they are.
As
Right.
they are.
Yeah.
Because
You have
if
to
you
accept
try to
them
go
as they
in
are.
with this little bit of your heart that's this will be a good project, it's don't
Yeah.
don't
take
get
any
married.
project.
It's
Yeah.
not, yeah. Or if you want to be with that person,
Yeah,
don't
if
move
they're
it
fine.
forward.
Yeah,
you got to
exactly.
accept exactly as they are the fruit that is currently
Yep.
on the tree, not the fruit you hope will grow.
Yep.
If this is how they are for the rest of our lives, are you
How-
okay with that?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do think that, I'm sure, well, you guys tell me, would you just casually date if you didn't see potential or intention? I just had my other young 20s friend who said, yeah, he's been dating someone for a couple months and he's like, we both have intended destination. That's how he described, both parties have intentional desire to be together
Yeah.
with someone. So there's not let's just hang out for the next 4 or 5 years of our life.
Right.
While we,
Yeah.
which I'm not saying is bad. I'm curious for you two, what that's been like.
Yeah, I think there has to be some level of intention. But I think that goes to what you were saying about just your own boundaries and what you want. But yeah, I don't necessarily feel like it needs to be courting. But I don't know. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not. It doesn't. Yeah. Maybe.
Like,
Yeah.
I think but it's also hard because if you do have like a Christian worldview, a biblical worldview, and you're a Christian, or I guess an evangelical worldview, and you want to like have kids, there is a certain biological reality that
Yes.
kind of pushes things forward for women only, which is like we just have the short.
That's
end of the
questions
stick.
for heaven. I know.
Yeah, like
Come
so.
on now.
I mean, it does get hard to casually date indefinitely, but also there's some things you just are like, all right, Lord, you're the quarterback, call the play. Like I just have to leave this in your
Yeah.
hands. Like
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know.
because
I feel like I went on a tangent, but
I liked it. And we're getting close to out of time. So I want to ask you guys one more question. Okay. You can answer either one. I'm just going to give you a moment to address the married folks and be like, hey, here's one thing that I would want you to know as a single person, or address the single men out there. Here's one thing I'd want you to know.
My
On
phone
behalf
number
of the single
is
ladies,
2.
you can answer either one. Drop your wisdom.
for any one of those groups, so anybody in the
Either
world,
one of those.
I guess.
Anybody in the world.
Single people or married people.
I mean, I said single guys and married people.
Okay.
No pressure.
I would say I'm going to address the single men because I feel like the married people that I know are really wonderful to me and like are really good about bringing me into their lives. Single men, how dare you? Just kidding. I mean, like, as a woman, and knowing
you as a woman, that's hilarious.
as a woman, and knowing like all of my wonderful women friends, like we do so much work to invest in ourselves and grow in whatever area, like whether that's physical, emotional health, getting to know our pasts, spiritual health, like all that kind of stuff. I don't see the same amount of effort, and it's needed for the single men.
She went from a punch to a point right then. She was like,
I mean,
I-
she's talking right.
And like I am very accepting and very gracious. However, dating is very bleak, and there are so many wonderful, wonderful single women, and they're gonna miss out because these men, I'm talking to you men, are not taking the same steps forward to grow and be healthy
as a person.
person, not even like so that I can be, I mean, that's great. But as a person, like you need to step it up and grow a little. That's
Heard.
it.
I have a message for the moms and dads. It's similar to yours, but raise your sons the way you raise your daughters. Because it feels like it's too late for the guys that are in their 30s right now. They're already fully formed people. I'm thinking about the future generations of young women who are going to grow up to be responsible, capable, high capacity individuals. And if they're attracted to men, that may not be the same. So I think what I've seen is a lot of young boys being spoiled and young girls being shoved out to the wolves. That's just my personal experience. If you get mad when you listen to this podcast, blame me.
That's
Don't
fine.
blame Nicole.
Email
can blame me.
Nicole at
We said we're going to
I know, yeah. I think, but that's just what I think.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that emotional wellness and just being just an okay person comes from like raising your boys with gentleness and compassion, but also like don't excuse things for them that you wouldn't for your daughters.
Yeah.
That's a good word. I love that.
Sorry, I guess
Gosh.
am I telling you, Nicole?
I know, I liked it. I mean, I liked it because I was like, I feel it because it's because a teenage boy becomes a very foreign entity to a mother. Like
Yeah, she's like,
you
what's
start to
going on
not
here?
have the same like. You're now a really different creature.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of moms really shrink back. They either
Yeah.
don't have the fortitude in their marriage to engage their husband about being a father, or they themselves like don't know how to do it, or don't know what to do. And so they shrink back a bit. I think it can happen with girls too, but it's a good word because we're responsible to the next generation. And I give you guys carte blanche to speak into my boys' lives. Anytime.
Your babies are so sweet.
They're so sweet. See, but that's the problem.
That's a problem.
That's what just
But
happened.
Cam is also wonderful too. Like, I
thank
feel like
you.
Cam is so
Yeah.
sweet to me.
Yeah. Wow. Good. You guys, you've been amazing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom there's so much more we could talk about, but we'll wrap it here. Godly Dating 101, guys. This is the book if you want to check it out. I do recommend it. I mostly recommend these two though. All right. See you guys next time.
Feel so lost with you.